everyone, and welcome. My name is Irena Bednarik, and I'm the Vice President of International Government Relations at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. On behalf of Forum Europe and HPE, I would like to warmly welcome you to today's session. As you know, we will analyze together, and with the help of distinguished speakers from across the European continent, a very specific topic. How can the European Recovery and Resiliency Fund support digitization and growth of European SMEs? In July 2020, absolutely in the middle of this dreadful pandemic, the member states did an act of courage. They decided to mutualize their debt to be able to issue the so-called European Recovery and Resiliency Fund, which is going to inject 750 billion euros into the European economy. Two really noteworthy elements in the so-called RRF instrument. On the one hand, the projects and services that will be funded by the RRF must be completed by 2026. 4 years only, very short time, but unique opportunity to transform our economies and societies. Secondly, the European governments and European institutions wanted to make sure that the RRF, as unique opportunity, will actually bring long-lasting effects and changes into the European economies. And this is why the RRF instrument is actually accompanied with the requirement for structural reforms to be operated in each of the European member states. Projections show that the RRF instrument will help the GDP of the EU grow by 1.5% by 2024. So an absolutely unique opportunity, unique injection of capital into the European economies. This is why Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and Forum Europe decided to launch today a series that will help us analyze in detail and unpack this financial instrument. We're launching the series today, as you know, looking at SMEs, and the second episode will take place on July the 5th and will actually look at healthcare. So let's open today's session. Why did we want to start the series looking at small and medium enterprises? Very simple. Small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, represent 99% of the European industrial basis, and they actually employ 2/3 of the European workforce. Today's session, for those that follow us regularly, will be structured as usual. We will have a series of keynote speeches to begin, to set the scene, and then followed by a panel where you're very much welcome to ask your questions and where we will actually unpack the key things on RRF and SMEs. So with no further ado, I would like to open up the keynote session, and I would like to welcome to the stage Carme Artigas. Carme Artigas is the Secretary of State in Spain for Digitization and AI. So Secretary of State Artigas was unfortunately the last second withhold and could not be with us live. But considering the importance of SMEs and the value of the envelope that they are putting on the table in Spain for SMEs, she was really kind enough to record for us a message and set the vision of the Spanish government for SMEs in relation to the RRF. Thank you, and we can launch the video.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to be able to briefly share with you all the vision and projects of the government of Spain around such an important topic as the digitalization of SMEs. Spain is facing a decisive and unprecedented process of modernization and structural reforms of our production model. A bet as a country around which we have designed an ambitious, sustainable, and resilient reconstruction project. The digital transformation is, together with the ecological transition, the key leverage of change for the economic and social recovery of our country. A fundamental process with the aim of advancing in the project of a modern, sustainable, and resilient country that we are beginning to build with our España digital agenda. A forward-looking and a strategic project for the present and the future, to which we are going to dedicate almost 1/3 of the total of next generation funds that Spain will receive. SMBs are the soul and skin of our country's business model. They represent approximately 98% of the total number of our companies, and they employ around 50% of people working in our country. An area therefore essential for our economy. However, it continues to show significant shortcomings in terms of its adaptation to the new digital scenario. Fundamental due to its characteristics, sectors of action, and limited resources and skills. Our commitment is to offer them the support they need. At the beginning of the year, only 9% of the turnover of SMBs came from online sales. And the number of ICT specialists in these small and medium-sized companies account for just over 3% of their workforce. Figures that demonstrate the absolutely key importance and priority of addressing the comprehensive modernization of SMBs. Because we cannot allow SMBs to miss the digitalization train. At stake is the loss of a world of possibilities for growth and evolution in the coming years to boost their competitiveness and to deepen innovation as a path to improve productivity and the resilience of our productive system. We estimate that digitalization can help increase the productivity of Spanish SMBs between 15 and 25% at least. And thanks to the disruptive technologies such as AI or big data, they can increase labor productivity by up to 37% by 2033, according to the European Commission. Our country, therefore, needs to boost the multiplier effect that the private sector also can offer to this investment in the digital transformation. And that step has to do with digital, and we're going to take it together. Therefore, digitalization of SMBs is one of the fundamental pillars in the deployment of this España digital agenda, our Spain's roadmap for digitalization. And we're putting in place an SMEs digitalization plan already underway that will mobilize almost 5 billion euros from the Next Generation funds until 2023. Thanks to generation of solutions, knowledge, and innovations that will optimize their processes and supporting the development of new technology advanced products and services with greater value. And the key project of that is the project Kit Digital Toolkit, together with the Accelerator PYME program, and an ambitious initiative already underway that has spread already 100 number of support offices to SMBs along the territory that will incorporate 40 additional offices in rural areas. The deployment, the highest initiative of all, is the Digital Toolkit, Kit Digital, a program with an investment above 3 billion euros over the next 3 years, financed through the Next Generation Fund, focused to digitalize 1.5 million SMBs. A project we have launched with the premise that access to SMBs to the program should be easy, with no bureaucracy, personalized, and as much as automated as possible. This is why we have deployed the program. Before that, we had to modernize our own public administration by deploying AI robots with RPA, robot process automation, that has allowed to really erase the key administrative barriers that they need to provide no papers, and they can apply for these grants in less than 20 minutes. So we had to first modernize our own public administration to be able to deploy such an ambitious program. Because we know that SMBs don't have time to lose, asking for subsidies that they received probably 3 or 4 months later. Just in the first 2 months, we have been able to reach the number of 60,000 applications, and in less than 2 months, we have already deployed more than 10,000 digital toolkit bonuses. In some regions, more than 60% of the targeted SMBs have already applied for this subsidy. The subsidy works like this. We are deploying it in 3 phases. First phase is for companies between 10 and 49 employers. That's the phase we are in which more than 60% of the total universe has already applied for this subsidy, the digital toolkit, in less than 2 months. And now we're going to the real challenge, which is mobilize all the companies with less than 10 workers, that are millions in Spain. We are doing this, as I mentioned, first because we are innovating a lot with RPAs, eliminating all the bureaucracy. The SMBs need to provide 36 documents to us for this subsidy, according to the law. So they are not providing anyone, because we are getting that all with RPAs, and they don't need to provide any single document. We have had deployed this thanks to the collaboration of the private sector with administrations, with the local administration, regional administration, public entities, with the digitalization agents. More than 7,000 companies have registered to become digitalization agents. So the proof of this program is that when we innovate and we make things easy for the SMBs, they respond. So we are really enthusiastic about the early success of this program, and we believe that it's going to be a real game changer for our economy. Making companies that are more digital, especially the SMBs, is key for the sustainable economic model for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Secretary of State Artigas, for outlining also the reforms of how this funding will be dispersed to Spanish SMEs. So I would just like to highlight a few elements and proof points that you mentioned that I find extremely compelling. We need to digitize SMEs and help them digitize, because digitization can increase their competitiveness by 37%. And the second incredibly important point that you're mentioning, it's simplification of bureaucracy. And congratulations to the Spanish government for really trying to improve this specific mechanism. And I'm sure we will be able to discuss about this issue later on, when we're going to unpack the details of how access to this funding really work in practice. Thank you so much for your remarks. So we heard now the Spanish government vision, and I'm extremely honored to welcome to the stage now Peter Oczko. Peter Oczko is the Deputy Minister for Industry 4.0, the Minister of Industry and Trade in the Czech Republic, and upcoming presidency of the European Union will be in your capable hands as of July the 1st. So warmly welcome, and thank you so much for being with us, and the floor is all yours to share with us your vision. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. I hope you see and hear me well. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for the invitation to this very interesting and topical debate, because recovery plans as well as the digitization of SMEs are very high priority agenda in the EU and in the most of the member states, of course. Of course, it's so also in the Czech Republic. For us, SMEs definitely form actually basis of the economy. In the Czech Republic, we have more than 1 million SMEs. As you know, Czech Republic is a country with more or less 11 million people. So 1 million of SMEs is really the core of our economy. We have, of course, several strategic documents that are focusing on digitalization and SMEs. We have a SME strategy in place, and we have already for several years a key strategy to actually digitalize the economy and society. It's called Digital Czechia, and it has 3 pillars. One is focusing on the digitalization of public sector. Second one is focusing on a digital agenda within the EU. That is, of course, even more important now with the presidency of the EU Council underway. And then we have a big pillar that is called Digital Economy and Society, that is being coordinated by our ministry. And I'm head of a section for digitalization and innovation. So we are very much responsible for that. That is focusing on many aspects of digital economy and society, including SMEs. And having said that, actually, I'm coming to recovery plan, and I just would like to say that we were when designing the recovery plan in the digital part, we were following the main strategies of the Czech Republic in this area. Generally, Czech National Recovery Plan actually dedicated 22% of our investments to digital transformation. So it's a little bit more than actually it was expected by the Commission, and because the Commission expects at least 20%. And this 22% is more or less 1.5 billion euro in the Czech case. Of course, part of this is dedicated to digitalization of public sector. It's about 585 million euro dedicated to components related to e-government, to cybersecurity in the public administration, to better exchange of data, and so on. This part is not administered by us, but Prime Minister of Interior, but we cooperate also on some important projects. We have also part of the recovery plan dedicated to digitalization of education, and it's also more than 500 million euro dedicated for digital equipment for schools, training for teachers, new university programs in fast-growing digital fields, and also very much needed upskilling and reskilling courses for citizens. This is primarily coordinated by Minister of Education and Minister of Labor, but again, we as Minister of Industry and Trade cooperate on a few of these activities. But coming to SMEs, this is the center of today's, or SMEs are in the center of today's event, and they are, of course, in the center of our priorities also here at the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And of course, many of the digital transformation activities under the National Recovery Plan in the Czech Republic are dedicated to, primarily dedicated to SMEs. But I would like to explain generally how we have designed the digital economy part of National Recovery Plan. This part is worth 650 million euro. Dedicated to digital transformation of economy, of business, and it's divided into three parts that actually form together one concept: how to actually accelerate digitalization of Czech Republic in the area of economy. We have one component dedicated to actually improving the digital infrastructure. That is the necessary blood for the digital economy. You cannot have high quality digital services without high quality digital infrastructure. So that's the first component. Then the second component is dedicated to new digital technologies, to innovation in digital area, including startups, including supporting of SMEs in this area. And the third part is dedicated to investment to digital transformation in businesses. So it's about implementation of the new digital technologies in SMEs. So we have three parts: digital infrastructure, new digital technologies and implementation or adoption, support of adoption of digital technologies in the business. The first part dedicated to digital infrastructure, where we aim to cover, of course, especially so-called white spots, so the periphery areas. Generally, the digital infrastructure in the Czech Republic is not in a bad shape. Actually, in some areas we have really good results, but definitely we have to address the periphery areas. And what we want to address are 5G corridors and also 5G services as primary targets. So it's very shortly about digital infrastructure. We could speak, of course, longer about that. The second part, the new innovative digital technologies, is I think it's really important, because we would like to focus on increasing the investments into innovative startups in digital area. We have a lot of investments into AI research, into blockchain technologies, but we need to have more investments in innovative startups and scale-ups. So together with the European Investment Fund, we prepare new investment schemes. This is just one part of these activities. We want to invest into quantum communication infrastructure. That is also important for the future cybersecurity. But we also want to invest into so-called demonstration projects based on digital technologies, especially 5G. So we would like to support, and we are starting already with that, to support projects that are first time deployment of new technology in Industry 4.0 or in smart city, maybe also some other areas. This is very interesting activity that has very, very positive feedback from the Commission, but especially from the stakeholders, companies, and also the municipalities. And we have more activities in this area, in this component. And the last but not least is the last component that is focusing on the digital transformation of enterprises. It means the adoption of digital technologies. There we want to invest high amounts of money into activity that we call digital business or virtual business. And it means that the companies, especially SMEs, will have possibility to invest into new digital services and new digital equipment, but they will have to also upgrade their digital processes and how they work with the human resources in the company. So we want them to have actually digital transformation projects. This is one of the most important activities we have, and it will be accompanied by something that we also co-invest from National Recovery Plan, and it's a framework or network of digital innovation hubs that are primarily financed from Digital Europe program from European Commission itself, but we will co-invest from National Recovery Plan into this network to make it operational as soon as possible. And these digital innovation hubs will be focusing on helping the digital in helping to SMEs in their digital transformation, but also helping them with the investments and the subsidies. So we could speak much more about that. We will focus also on supporting the testing and experimental facilities related to artificial intelligence. We will have some programs that will support SMEs in bringing new digital solutions that help to the economy to be more resilient, more actually, or less endangered by the crisis, and so on. Generally, I think the recovery plan works well. One thing I have to say, actually, we were a little bit surprised by a quite high level of administration, and that is actually that comes with RRF regulation. So actually, it's I couldn't say that RRF is a fast and flexible response to the COVID crisis, because it takes quite a lot of effort on our side to set up the administration and implementation mechanisms. And sometimes also it's not also easy for especially for SMEs to actually prepare the applications that actually react to all the necessary rules and criteria of RRF. That's one point actually. Maybe I would suggest to be more flexible. And the very last point I want to mention at this moment is that actually now with Ukrainian crisis, with the Russian aggression to Ukraine, that is absolutely inexcusable. We definitely see that actually having a robust digital infrastructure and digital services can help to better actually deal with such a crisis. And I think we should be more flexible also in RRF and be able to actually react also in the digital part of national recovery plans to the Ukrainian crisis. We cooperate very much with Ukraine on digital aspects, and I think we could help European businesses to actually develop new solutions that could help in the EU, but also in Ukraine to actually better deal with this terrible war. We have for example, of the Czech company Safetyka that develops security software that actually we also provide to Ukraine, because it's very well working in the situation when you have actually decentralized government that unfortunately in some parts of Ukraine cannot work in the standard conditions, and for this software is very well suitable. So I would propose to have more flexibility in RRF in the context of a very difficult crisis that is affecting actually whole Europe. So that's all for my contribution, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much for your remarks and for a lot of thought-provoking elements that you have brought to our attention. So first of all, I would like to thank you for having outlined the importance of the ecosystem, because in your Czech plan, as you outline, it's not sufficient to just pour money on SMEs and digitize them if there is no ecosystem that actually can support them. So importance of digital infrastructure, 5G connectivity, especially in remote areas, absolutely fundamental. And secondly, obviously, you rightly are calling out some technologies, AI, blockchain, and really elements that can empower SMEs to be competitive, also hopefully on the global stage. More flexibility, as you just mentioned. So we will discuss later on in the panel about the technicalities and difficulties that SMEs actually face in their daily life to even access to the funding that is available. But maybe before we let you go, I would just like to ask you one question. So obviously you're gonna take over the presidency of the European Union in practically less than a month. And one of the files that you will lead upon, obviously having the portfolio of SMEs, will be the Digital Decade program. So you hinted yourself to it. So the European Commission would like to see by 2030, 90% of the millions of SMEs out there to have basic digital intensity skills. I would just like to ask you, do you think we are on the right track to achieve these targets? Are the investments on the table enough? And what else is top of mind for your presidency?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Our presidency is really close, and digitalization, digital agenda is definitely one of the highest priorities for the Czech Republic. Just generally mentioning, we will definitely be seeking to actually really advance the most important digital files like Artificial Intelligence Act, Data Act, but also to finalize the discussion on NIS2 directive, Network Infrastructure Services Directive upgrade. That is very important for the safety and security, and of course, cybersecurity will be very important point for our presidency. But you are asking for digital decade policy program. That is also one of the very important files on our table, and definitely we want to shift it or to finalize the DPP, or Digital Decade Policy Program. But there will be some discussions. Actually, the targets are that are set in the program are quite ambitious, and we see some debates on them. But on the other hand, we have to be ambitious. We have to be ambitious because the world is not waiting for us, not waiting for Europe. We have to be really ambitious in all the four parts of the Digital Decade Policy Program. So infrastructure, business, public administration, and skills. And skills are particularly important because without skilled people and digital competencies, we will not be successful in the other parts of our goals under the DPP. So we have to do a lot. We have to be even more investing into this. I think so from my point of view, the goals are ambitious, but it's exactly as it should be. We should speak about mechanisms, how to achieve the goals better and smoother. Of course, with RRF in place, actually, this is one of the tools that helps. And I think it's it was very wise decision of the Commission that the Commission said that at least 20% of RRF has to be invested into digitalization, including digital skills. So I think it actually accelerates the fulfillment of the goals. And we are on the right track, actually. During the last 2 years of COVID and now with the Ukraine crisis, I think most of the member states and their businesses and institutions actually have realized that they have to be digital, and because for any future crisis, it will help them to survive and to deal with the problems that the crisis brings. So DDPP will be definitely one of our priorities under our presidency. We think that the goals are set quite well. We need to speak about the mechanisms, how to achieve them, but I think it's really doable, and we have to finalize the Digital Decade Policy Program soon because the year 2030 is coming very quickly. It's not so far from now, and we have to act. So actually, this is definitely one of the highest priorities for the Czech presidency of the EU.
Fantastic. So right targets, very ambitious, lots of energy and work will be required. So on behalf of everyone, we wish you lots of success. Deputy Minister Oczko, during your presidency, it's going to be very impactful and meaningful to the entire society. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so we have now had a pretty detailed overview of where the member states are standing and how they're planning to use the RRF to help the SMEs. So lots of governmental focus, but what is the role of big industry and corporations in the bigger picture and building a healthy ecosystem for small and medium enterprises? To answer today's questions, I'm pleased to introduce to the stage Gilles Thibault, Senior Vice President and Managing Director for Northwestern Europe at HP. Gilles, thank you for being with us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Irena. So, good morning, everybody. Obviously, it is my pleasure to share today HPE's view on the critical issues of digitalization of SMEs. Sorry, of SMEs. As a global technology company present in Europe for many decades, HPE is willing and committed to play its part in the European SMEs digitalization journey. Through our ecosystem of, and you said it, of over 30,000 partners, we support tens of thousands of small and medium businesses across Europe. We help them with the digitalization journey since many years, and we felt it was important to raise awareness on the challenges they're facing and the unprecedented opportunities the RRF is offering to them. According to the European Investment Bank, nearly 50% of all large corporations in the EU have successfully integrated digital technology, while only 17% of SMEs can say the same. However, things are starting to change, and SMEs' spending rate on digitalization is gradually increasing, with an estimated expenditure of 65 billion by 2022, up from 57 billion just 4 years ago. So why is it important and timely to discuss the process of digitalization of SMEs today? Well, the EU SME agenda has been reinforced in recent years, in large part thanks to the EU SME strategy published in March 2022, right at the time when COVID-19 hit Europe. And this strategy serves as the compass for the recovery of SMEs, focusing on digitalization, sustainability, and resiliency. And additionally, the 2030 policy program, The Path to the Digital Decade, published in September last year, set some essential and very ambitious objectives for SMEs in the EU region. For example, the aim is that 75% of European businesses should adopt cloud computing services, big data, and artificial intelligence by 2030. More than 90% of SMEs should also achieve some kind of basic level of digital intensity by 2030. And lastly, Europe should double the number of unicorns by growing the pipeline of innovative scale-ups and also improving the access to finance. Obviously, these are ambitious targets because while the journey of digitalization is certainly not a minor task, it is probably even more challenging for numerous European SMEs who are still faced with various complexities, as very well highlighted by Mrs. Artigas and Mr. Oshko. One of the first challenges relates to the SME's ability to build and attract adequate digital skills, also highlighted very well by Mr. Oshko. I will come back to this later, as some member states aim at addressing this issue in their national recovery and resilience plans. A second challenge relates to accessing to new and industry-linked technologies. And as an example, high-speed broadband is an absolute prerequisite for the digital transformation of SMEs. And according to the OECD, broadband penetration rates still actually vary greatly across countries so far. Another key challenges faced by SMEs in the digital transformation process relates to the need to adapt their business model to really benefit from the potential of new technologies, for instance, e-commerce and integrated e-commerce in their business. And then finally, and perhaps even more importantly, SMEs also need to access the many institutional funding streams available to them. And the reality is that finding the funding streams to reinvent business model, access new technologies, and train employees is not always obvious. The OECD reinforced this narrative in the 2021 reports by demonstrating that SMEs face big difficulties in accessing financing for intangible digital investment that cannot be easily used as collateral to secure a loan. So this might sound a little bit like a gloomy picture, but the good news in reality is that the EU RRF program offers opportunities to address many of those challenges. As we know, member states need to allocate a minimum of 20% of their RRF funds towards digital transformation. Recently, Commissioner Gentiloni elaborated that 22 of the currently approved national plans include measures to benefit SMEs for a total investment worth 109 billion euros. Obviously, it's pretty massive. Spain, for instance, as we heard, allocates nearly 5 billion in funding towards digitalization of businesses and SMEs. Furthermore, as we've heard from the Deputy Minister for Industry 4.0 of the Czech Republic, Mr. Petr Roško, their national plan directed nearly half of its entire investment in digital transformation towards the digitalization of businesses. In the same context, the Italian plan stands out with 30 billion directed towards digitalization of SMEs that includes a series of investment such as the so-called Transition 4.0, aimed at modernizing and digitalizing the production sector. So the RRF programs also notably recognizes the urgent needs for digital reskilling and upskilling of SMEs employees. And I touched upon this earlier. This is a key challenge. Spain intends to adopt a new startup law, which would create favorable conditions for the creation and growth of innovative startups. This would be complemented with actions to support at least 6,900 entrepreneurs that would benefit from an entrepreneurship skills program. Likewise, Greece is increasing investment in training programs to enhance ICT skills of professionals, with a total of 3,600 individuals expected to benefit from it. Portugal, Slovakia, Estonia, Lithuania, and Malta also have dedicated investment in digital reskilling and upskilling. When it comes to the challenge of reinventing business models, Portugal intends, for example, to allocate RRF funds towards the creation of 25 digital commerce accelerators, as well as a system of financial incentive to help SMEs digitalize their business models. Around 30,000 SMEs are expected to benefit from this great initiative. In relation to the access to finance, which was the fourth challenge I've highlighted, the RRF scoreboard indicates that SMEs face specific challenges due to their size, as well as barriers to expand market opportunities to access finance. Croatia recognizes this challenge and will use the RRF to establish several financial instruments to provide more favorable financing conditions, with the objective of distributing 1,300 loans and subsidies to SMEs. So the RRF will play a critical role in digital transformation of SMEs. This is also why we at HPE felt it was important to raise awareness with this event today. It's all about ensuring that SMEs can better manage, use, and get benefits from the data that they generate. And this is where HPE can lend a strong contribution to the digitalization of SMEs in Europe. For the purpose of helping customers to extract insights and value from data, we have articulated a data-first modernization journey that can help them take the necessary steps to achieve the digital transformation. It has 5 stages that go from data anarchy, where data is siloed and data reporting is merely done ad hoc, to data economics, with real-time data push and pull, enabling innovation and data modernization. In this context, we've started to analyze the European market with a survey to map where companies are in the digital maturity journey. Out of 800 companies surveyed in Germany, SMEs hit an average score of 1.7 in the 5 stages of the data maturity scale, meaning that they barely know what data they are really generating. This represents a tremendous potential for data value creation and monetization. As my colleague Magic will explore further in today's panel discussion, our data-first modernization approach is closely aligned with Europe's vision for data sovereignty. We believe in data as a core ownership asset that our customers should control. We believe that data is everywhere and must be accessible from its native location. We believe that data has rights and sovereignty, and that our customers should be free to choose where data is stored and how to industrialize the data supply chain. And finally, we believe that data must be unified to enable business agility. So, in conclusion, RRF marks an historic opportunity for the revitalization of Europe's economy. More than ever before, we have a chance to transform our economies, but we should not take this moment for granted. As citizens, industries, and legislators, we all share a joint responsibility to ensure that the funds we allocate will be effective and fruitful for generations to come. With the pre-disbursement of the RRF plans beginning in many countries, we look forward to uncover best practices from the member states and to discuss some of the expected challenges faced by SMEs, but also the immense opportunities provided by this critical moment to make this digital jump and to reach Europe's 2030 digital decade targets. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here today with us, and I look forward to an insightful first edition of our RRF events series. Back to you, Irena.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gilles. And thank you also for bringing a new dimension to the debate, namely the one on data. And the results of the survey that you quoted are, I would say, nearly shocking. So having a majority of SMEs not even being aware of the data that they are generating, let alone exploit the insights and generate new services. So I'm sure in the panel we will be able to comment further on that, but I would like to again thank you for presenting your vision today with us.
Thank you.
So with that, I hope you have enjoyed our keynote portion. So really giving us some food for thoughts, and we will now open up the panel to really start unpacking the various themes that our keynote speakers have highlighted. Access to finance. What are the additional European tools for SMEs? Is there too much bureaucracy? How can we help actually SMEs upskill, and how can we help them eventually also retain talent that they are developing? All of this and much more will be discussed in the panel. And it is my pleasure to invite our distinguished panelists to the stage, starting with Heidi Siegen. Heidi is the Senior Policy Officer for Digitisation of Businesses in DG Connect in the European Commission. Hi, Heidi, and welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. We have then Antti Rivari, Director General of the Finnish Patent and Registration Office. Good morning, Antti, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. Sebastian Prat, CEO and founder of Flexible IT. Sebastian is running a company, founder, and now running the company based out of Spain. We'll hear shortly more about that. Thank you, Sebastian, for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Luc Hendricks, Director Enterprise Policy at SME United. Welcome, Luc.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for the invite, Irena.
Thank you. And last but not least, Maciek Szczesniak, Vice President and General Manager of SMB and Mid-Market at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Hi, Maciek.
Good morning. Thank you. Hello.
So I would like to start talking a little bit more about the European instruments, besides also the RRF or funded by the RRF, for the SMEs. So, and maybe Heidi, I would turn to you to really hear from you what is in the rather big toolbox the European Commission prepared for SMEs, and if you could walk us through the various instruments that are out there at disposal for them.
Yes, certainly. So, digitalization together with the greening of the economy is one of the Commission's highest priorities. It's only through greater digitalization that we will be able to successfully tackle some of the major challenges that we're facing in Europe today. These include recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic and creating more resilience to future economic shocks, to addressing climate change, and also reducing our dependence on Russian oil and gas. The COVID-19 pandemic, it hit SMEs particularly hard, many losing customers and revenues, and resulting in them having to shed labor and sometimes, completely close. However, more digitized SMEs fared much better, and some highly digitized firms even saw increased revenues as people went online to shop, work, learn, and to communicate with their families and friends. In response to the crisis, many businesses increased their investments in digitization or made the decision to start their digitalization journey. Despite this, however, it remains the case that too many SMEs have an insufficient level of digitization to really truly benefit their business. Indeed, according to our data, around 60% of SMEs have their own basic level of digital intensity, and rates of the uptake of more advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, cloud, and big data are still quite low, though they are increasing. To strengthen digitalization in Europe, the Commission's Digital Decade communication announced a set of EU-level targets, as we've already heard, to be achieved by 2030. And they tackle 4 specific areas: digital skills, digital public services, connectivity, and then importantly, the digital transformation of businesses. So for businesses, the targets are 90% of SMEs to have a basic level of digital intensity, and then 75% uptake by businesses of these important advanced technologies like AI, big data, and cloud. So to enable the digital transformation and to achieve these targets, the Commission has mainstreamed digital in all its policy areas and is dedicating billions in EU funding. In particular, the new Digital Europe programme, which is the first EU programme to specifically dedicated to supporting the rollout of digital technologies across the economy, receives 7.5 billion for projects in 5 key capacity areas. High-powered computing, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, advanced digital skills, and then digital innovation hubs. And this is something that I want to talk to you about a little bit more. To support the digitalization of SMEs and the adoption of advanced digital technologies in Europe, the Commission is investing together with member states around 1.5 billion euros in a network of European digital innovation hubs that will span the whole EU. The network will provide companies, especially SMEs and public sector organizations, in all regions and sectors with expert digitalization support that they need. So technical expertise, opportunities to test before investing, financing advice and support with access to finance, as well as providing them with the necessary training. Member states play an integral role in the setup of this network, pre-selecting eligible hubs and also providing co-funding. But also large companies have an important role to play. They should help the many member states in their networks, encouraging and supporting them in the introduction of advanced digital technologies. I'm happy to say that the selection procedure for the setup of this initial network has just been completed, and we will have a network of initially 136 hubs. So these 136 hubs have now been selected to participate, and we will invite them to grant agreement, as we call it. And in addition to that, we've also given Seal of Excellence, as we call it, to another 89 hubs. So these were hubs that were also of sufficiently good quality to have been taken forward, but for which there was not enough funding under the digital program. So the idea of this seal of excellence is that we want to try to encourage that these hubs would then also be set up making use of other funds. So with the seal of excellence, they can then go and look for additional funding, either from member states or from other sources that can be used from the EU. For example, the Recovery and Resilience Fund or the European Regional Development Fund. And because they have this seal of excellence, they then can join the network. If they get this funding, they can then join the network and they would be then equal partners in the network. So turning to the RRF, around 26% of RRF investments is dedicated to digital investments, which is above this 20% as we've heard that has been earmarked. And of that, 19% is towards the digitalization of business. So this is quite substantial funds that will go in this way. And also you need to take into account, all of the other funding that goes to digital investments is also supportive of digitization of SMEs. I mean, as we heard, you have to have broadband, you have to have skills. So all of this funding sort of coalesces to support the digitalization of businesses. And in addition to proposing a variety of other investments for the digitalization of business, 8 member states have opted to make use of RRF as an additional source of funding for their hubs. So there will be funding in 8 member states that will also support an addition of hubs to the network. So our hope is that this network will be a strong catalyst for digitalization of businesses and therefore make a significant contribution to reaching these 2030 targets.
Great, thank you, Heidi. And maybe just as a follow-up question, because obviously, if I understand correctly, the objective of the digital innovation hubs, it's basically a center that is dispersed, let's say, in the European territory. So we have over 200 more or less. And the idea, if I understood the concept correctly, is that if I am an SME, I can show up at this center and say, I want to do a digital maturity assessment. I don't know exactly how, but I kind of feel the digital can help me, especially for SMEs that are non-IT specialists. And then will this hub take action? Is this for free? How will small and medium enterprises even know that these hubs exist in the territory? So could you maybe add some color on these points?
Yeah, certainly. So exactly, it works exactly like this. There is a network. This network will initially be 136 hubs. We hope to expand that. There will be currently the network that we have is covering very well all sectors, technologies, and regions, but there are some gaps. So we will have another call towards the end of the year to fill these gaps. So this will be boosted. The numbers will be boosted a little bit by this second call, and also because of the investments that will come from RRF and probably also from ERDF. So you're talking about this initial network of 136, but it will grow. And the idea is really to cover all regions of Europe, to be able to cover all businesses and all SMEs needs, in particular towards digitization. So as you said, an SME can turn up at their local hub. Their local hub will have local expertise, will speak the local knowledge, have the local knowledge. And even though this hub might be specialized in particular sectors or particular specializations in technologies, this hub will also act as an access point to the rest of the network. So we really want to encourage the networking of the hubs. And we will do that also with the setup of what we call a digital transformation accelerator, which is something that we're doing an evaluation for at the moment. And this digital transformation accelerator will really work on networking the hubs, creating promotional activities, conferences, using social media, so that everybody is very well aware of this network and what it does and what it can do for SMEs. So like I say, the SME can go to any of these hubs. They will get the support that they need, either directly from the hub or through the network. And there will be promotional activities through the DTA, but also by the hubs themselves, so that this project will really be known and it could benefit SMEs to the max.
Great.
It will be. May I think it's a great initiative, and Segan, we've been working as HPE with about 30,000 small and medium business partners, resale partners, and managed service providers around Europe, which could and should become an extension of those digital hubs, because they really advise locally the SMEs on the digitalization journey. Advising them, those small resellers, small managed service providers, advising those local communities which telephone to buy, which PC to buy, and what are the services that they should be leveraging. So we are also investing in this ecosystem of the partner network, which currently it's about 30,000 in Europe, which would be a great connection or augmentation of this 136 digital hubs. I think there's a strong opportunity for those 30,000 partners to go and connect with those hubs and further spread the news. It's a great news.
Yeah, in fact, we want if I can just respond a little bit to that, we want very much that the private sector is also involved in this network. So, one of the roles of the network will be to connect custom SMEs with other companies in the region that can support them with their needs. So the purpose of the network is not to replace what's already existing in the market, but to act as a facilitator. So, they will also fulfill this role with connecting, the customer to the provider. So this is also another role. And we also want the private sector to be involved in the hub as such. There is a possibility for the private sector also to contribute financially and in kind towards the activities of the hubs. So that's very much encouraged.
This is a very good connection or collaboration opportunity, because many of our resellers today, they are great in providing very basic services to the SMEs. I mentioned, choosing the right phone, choosing the right PC, basic installation and maintenance. But you mentioned, and we've heard from the keynote speakers, the need to accelerate the usage of AI, of big data, even understanding better the need to capture and utilize the data. I don't think that the local network of our partners, all of them are currently leveraging all of those capabilities. I think they are still using the basic capabilities. I've been at a panel 2 weeks ago when we discussed actually this move to the cloud services model, move to the AI, the move to the big data capabilities and services, which are not being utilized today. So I think there's a huge collaboration and still a learning for the network of those private companies that deal with the support, with the IT support for the SMBs locally, to learn from those hubs and to become a part of the extended network here. Totally agree with that.
Great. So I guess we already have a first call for action collectively. So we have today not only SMEs, but also big enterprises joining us. And as we hear, not only companies can for sure contribute financially or in kind to the digital innovation hubs the Commission and member states are setting up, but there is really also a call to make sure that the partners on the ground can also spread further and amplify this great opportunity for a digital transformation for SMEs. So thank you for bringing this to everyone's attention, Heidi. And now maybe transitioning to a specific project, because obviously we heard from member states, the big picture, massive envelopes, 5 billion in Spain, 13 billion in Italy. But maybe we would like now to dig deeper into one real life example. And I would call upon you, maybe Antti, if you could walk us through the project that you are leading on in Finland on digitization of payments for small and medium enterprises. So could you tell us more? How does this work? What are the challenges you are facing in really building a project of that nature?
Yeah, thank you. Glad to bring you through this project, which is it's a very cross-cutting project we're having. The basic idea it's about the getting business data more structured or structured in a similar form across the landscape of companies, including SMEs. The aim is to standardize and the content of basic business transactions, like having e-invoices, having e-receipts, having e-procurement messages. So that's the kind of a thing what we are aiming at. It is a big task, and it's not something we created like in 1 year or something. It's a sort of a product of a lot of thinking going on past 10 years, and we've had Nordic cooperation as well. We have a project called Nordic Smart Government and Business, which has been working for a couple of years to develop the ideas how to create this kind of infrastructure where you could have a sort of flow of information, especially as regards the financial data which the companies are holding, and this is a sort of the role of RRF has been very important in getting the final sort of kick to get this ball rolling in Finland. So we are now implementing this program where the of course the main responsibility lies with government authorities. My office is in charge of the coordination, but the tax authority is a very big player in this project, and the Statistics Finland and the state treasury, all of them who do their bit about this exercise are heavily involved. And I want to emphasize already now that this is done very much in cooperation with the private sector, because this is something we are actually we are doing this in order to allow standardization to take place in Finland. So it's also about the system vendors and those the accounting companies and so forth who are very much involved to do this, and have to say that the funding we got for this is just a sort of minor part of the whole effort which is needed in Finland. So this means a lot of sort of technical work to standardize things so that these systems can communicate with each other, and we have some sort of goals as well where we want to find ourselves in terms of e-invoices and e-receipts by the end of this project. But a lot of this is also about the finding rule books and standards for sharing the data, because it's very important that once you get gradually a big amount of this data from companies, you need to have a sort of uniform and a standardized way of sharing the data, and there I want to emphasize that we're looking very carefully in doing this in line with European standards which exist. We try to be active in promoting sort of creation of European standards, and also with our Nordic colleagues we try to sort of make sure we are making an international thing from the beginning. It is, of course, for authorities, there's a stake here to get as good in data from companies as possible. So all the reporting which is done to of course, the main thing is tax declarations, which is a big benefit both for authorities and for companies. If we can standardize, automate that, we get a lot of benefits. But it's also for the private sector, so that the SMEs, once they have more structured data on themselves, they have better opportunities to deal with creditors. I mean, where they need to show what is the actual shape of the company. If you have the structured data, you are able to do this. And if you go into very basics, this is about getting rid of the papers. I mean, this is getting rid of administrative burden of taking care of your receipts which you have in here and there, which you have to send to your accountant for operations. So that's probably the main benefit, even when we get this running in Finland, is that the businesses can concentrate on business and not on taking care of all the declarations and sending tickets and receipts here and there. So that's kind of a broad line of what we're planning here to do, and it's a kind of a it is a big challenge, and I want to emphasize that we recognize that there is a challenge, especially for SMEs, where they are supposed to get the benefits from more standardized and automized taking care of these things, but of course they have a lack of skills and capabilities still, and that's what we are very much focusing on, how we find solutions which can help them to have a very low threshold to go into this, and then at some point, of course, we need to make this mandatory as well for reporting, but the initial phase is to make this work. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Antti. And on the two macro topics that you're raising, skills and data, we'll come to those in a second. But maybe I just wanted to ask you one more question on digitization of payments project that you are running in Finland, because you're saying that obviously this at some point will have to become mandatory on the one hand, and on the other hand, let's say from a more general picture, you were sharing that the RRF was actually the investment that really was the tipping point to start, to kick off the project. So could you maybe share what are the challenges that you expect with, going paperless for small and medium enterprises? This is typically one example of the transformation which starts from really basics that needs to be addressed. So any particular challenges you're expecting, and then I'll take some questions from the audience.
Yep. One of the big challenges, of course, that in order to get this kind of infrastructure or ecosystem work, you need to have a similar sort of minimum level of standardization of the data, and then you need to go into the very roots of the whole thing, that you have to have the invoices, you have to have the receipts. One challenge is that there is market-based solutions which we of course applaud and which help us in this, but then to get everybody on the same table to have the minimum standardization, so that we could avoid this sort of lock-in effect of some vendor introducing a system which is not talking to other systems, and then locking in the customer to the particular solution. And that's one of the, and then there are, of course, the data is very valuable, and it's a big struggle of how to make sure that the data is shared only for the purposes of the very core financial data, and not the sort of business, let's say business secrets, and the let's say the customer knowledge which the big enterprises have. Of course, they have an interest in keeping it to themselves, but and then finally, it's of course about the SMEs, that it's very tricky to get somebody out of the easy, I mean, not very easy, but the traditional way of taking care of the accounting and all that. And here we are very much relying on accounting firms who are seeing the benefit, because and it's very important because they, of course, in a way, they have a stake in retaining the existing structures. But in Finland, we managed to get them to see the sort of next phase of accounting firms, that you need to do something else than do the raw work related to accounting.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. I think that your points on sharing data for the intended purpose only, standardization, no vendor lock-in are actually critical elements for the digital economy to flourish. Thank you for that.
And if I may add the international side of this, because there's no point of making a Finnish system where you can do this nationally, but you need to have a European scale in this.
It's super important on the local and the national, international level, and I totally agree with you. I have a very close friend of mine who has a group of gyms, in Warsaw, and he has several different providers of services. Because the data is not standardized, he cannot make decisions on a data, combined data information. He cannot analyze it. And I hear this message from many of the SMBs, small and medium enterprises that I talk to on a regular basis. They don't get the information, they don't get the data, It's not standardized, it's difficult to combine, and there is no recommendation or advice at this point in time how to utilize it to find efficiencies, to find new growth opportunities, to better understand the customers, to improve the customer experience. So standardization of the data, and also keeping the data closer to the SME itself, okay, making it accessible, constantly accessible and available. It's going to be one of the key challenges over the longer term period to make sure that we accelerate the expansions of the small and medium enterprises. Totally agree with that.
Thank you, Maciek. And I will come back to the data point in a second. I just wanted to take in two questions that the audience has shared so that we indeed allow also a conversation with them. So the first one is from Malgorzata Stelmach from Schumann Associates, who says, I quote, "Thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. Talking about the European Digital Innovation Hubs, when can we expect the results of the call for the hubs on European level?" So I guess, Heidi, that's one for you.
Yes, certainly. So, I mean, we had literally just finished the internal evaluation. And only yesterday, we had a meeting with the member states to let them know the results. So now we go into a phase where I would say the beginning of next week, the hubs will be notified themselves that they have been successful in the evaluation. And following that, there will be a period of grant agreement negotiation, basically. So the very final result with the sure knowledge on which hubs will join the network won't be available until this grant negotiation period has taken place. And it's expected that these grants will then be signed sometime in September. So then we will really have the final results on this evaluation. Okay, great. Second question from the audience is from Pedro Rodriguez Duarte, legal counselor at Competition, State Aid, Public Procurement and Transparency. I quote, "Nice initiative." Well, thank you, Pedro. We're glad that you like it. "We know that the European economic fabric is hugely based on SMEs, some of them really micro and family-sized. Making them more digital and greener is, of course, of paramount importance, but shouldn't we also be assisting them in becoming bigger, more competitive, and more oriented to future-proof businesses?" Anyone wants to comment on that? Yeah, Luc, Heidi, whoever wants to go first. Luc, yeah?
Yeah, thank you. Very good question. The only thing is, there is some word in it that I do not really understand. Should we not assisting SMEs to become bigger? Once again, 93.5% of all enterprises in Europe are micro enterprises, an additional 5.7 are small enterprises. What are SMEs? But it's their strength, and it's a little bit strange that in this question, and I hope I interpreted in the wrong way, that the person asking the question is considering SMEs as not really mature enterprises. And this was also the mistake that the Commission during years was making, saying, oh, SMEs have to become bigger. No, we need growth, but growth does not only mean becoming bigger in size, because this is exactly the strength of our small and micro enterprises, that they are flexible. We have seen this during the last years, during the last crises, that they were not dismissing their employees. So they are the only stable factor in the European economy. But of course, to be more competitive and also more oriented to future-proof businesses, of course. And I think this is also the aim of the European Commission with all the programs and of all the national programs, that our SMEs have to become more oriented towards a more sustainable economy. But to become bigger, I think If they want to grow, no problem. If they want to become bigger, no problem. But don't consider it as a condition to be considered as a real enterprise.
Interesting thoughts, Luc. Thank you. Heidi, did you want also to share some thoughts?
Yeah, I just add one or two things. I mean, I agree very much with what Luc has just said. There's a difference between SMEs and startups and scale-ups. And the Commission also differentiates its policy in this respect. You know, we have a focus on mainstreaming, you know, a focus on SMEs, but also there is specific policy on scale-ups and startups to, you know, encourage growth of small potential businesses. And as Luc said, SMEs, that, you know, they're the fabric of European business, if you want. They employ a huge amount of people and can be very successful in themselves. And the purpose of you know, supporting the digitalization of these businesses is only to make them more resilient and future-proof, and to strengthen them and strengthen their competitiveness. If there is some then growth in that because they want to grow, then also that's very positive.
Great.
I even always say that there is nothing small about small and medium enterprise. Mm-hmm. They are mature. They went to people that run those businesses, especially the what they call, I think in this question, micro and family size. They went there not to grow, to become a big enterprise. They went there because of a passion, of idea, of willingness to serve local community. If you open a restaurant, it doesn't mean that you want to open a restaurant chain, correct? But digitalization, and I agree totally with the competitiveness story, digitalization makes those small and medium enterprises more competitive and helps them, especially AI, big data, helps them to find ways to be more efficient, maybe save costs, especially in the current environment. It's a super important topic. Maybe find new growth opportunities. Again, I'm going to use an example of another friend of mine who during the COVID, and I agree totally with Luc, they are super resilient. A friend of mine opened a spa in the middle of COVID, which obviously she has seen her revenues dwindling to almost zero. But very quickly she opened an online store to sell the cosmetics. So now she has 2 businesses. Does she want to grow to 15 different locations? No, but she is definitely growing through the digitalization of her operations, and that's a great news, and that's a great path for all the SMEs in the future, especially in Europe with the support of the European Commission and European funds.
Great points on the restaurant, local restaurant and versus the chain. But so all morning we have been talking about SMEs. So let's hear from one of them. And Sebastian, first of all, I would love to ask you if you could share your experience. What do you do in your company? How many employees do you have? Where they're located? And maybe it would be also interesting to hear your perspective on the Spanish SMEs ecosystem. Before I give you the floor, just one remark I would like to make is that we need to all keep in mind that the EU is putting on the table envelopes in support of SMEs, but the mechanics of how this is then disbursed are determined at national level. So obviously today we could not analyze all of them. So we have Sebastian just to provide one anecdotal example, but as you know, in our events, we want to be as concrete as possible. So Sebastian, what is your business about, and how many people do you have in your company?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm the CEO and the founder for Flexible IT. So my colleague was talking about the enthusiasm, right? And that energy that the founders we have, right? And so we are an IT company that we provide software and services. We have 80 employees so far, and we have those employees based in several different regions, right? So we are covering UK, US, Brazil, India, and I'm from Spain, from Barcelona, and obviously the headquarters are here in Barcelona.
Great. And what can you tell us about the SME ecosystem in Spain? Because we had obviously your Secretary of State. So any, let's say, preliminary thoughts you want to share on how is the ecosystem of SMEs doing in Spain? And obviously you must be comparing notes with fellow CEOs.
Sure. I mean, as you were saying, every country is different, right? Or every region is different. So in Spain, we have something that I consider very special, right? So, and I have some data here in paper just to be sure that I'm not misleading that, right? So 99.8% of the Spanish companies are SMEs, which, I mean, 99.8, which is a lot, right? And 98.9 of those have less than 50 employees. And this goes to the previous question, right? Family-based SMEs, right? So, and you have to consider that 98.9 of those organizations represents 50% of the overall workforce in Spain. So, I mean, I mean, this information, it's impressive. I was not aware of that, to be honest. Just preparing this event, I just realized that. So, and you know, if I was in the EU's position, this is a challenge because you cannot help all of them. That's just impossible, no matter what you do, right? So at Flexible, we're lucky, I have to say, that because we support multiple large enterprises worldwide on the day-to-day services. And because we are very specific on our technology and our services, we have that ability. But as my colleague was saying before, you can create a business and maybe not open many franchises, right? So it depends on every sector. But in our case, we were needed to move to international market because our typical customer is more than 5,000 employees, 1,000 employees, super minimum, but typically more than 5,000 employees. And in Spain, our market is a small market. That's why I was pushed in my go-to-market to move internationally, right?
Great, and so this comes back to this Anti's point from before on internationalization and making sure that you do have an infrastructure that allows you to go internationally. And I mean, the points that you were quoting, the data points that you were quoting earlier are indeed quite incredible. So 50% of the workforce in Spain hold in less than 50 employees companies. So I would say thanks God that as we heard before, the SMEs were more resilient, especially the digital ones, and managed to keep their workforce during the pandemic. So, but maybe let's come to the really tricky question of the access to finance. So again, we spoke really abundantly about the available amounts, how they will be dispersed, etc., etc. But what I would like to hear, Sebastian, is what are your thoughts, like really running a company internationally out of Spain? How is your experience been so far, or from your colleagues in the Spanish market in terms of accessing to finance and funding?
Yeah, sure. So I want to talk about my colleagues and my friends here in Spain, right? Because if you are not in a tech sector and you are the CEO or general manager, etc., sometimes you struggle a bit more to get funds because it's all about that you have impeccable balance sheets, right? That support you to get that finance. And at the same time, the amount that the government is offering here, and I'm not criticizing that. I know from the previous point, right? How diluted is the SMEs market here. So every company can get from 2,000 up to 12,000. Every organization, SME organization, can get a maximum 12,000 euros, which for most of my friends makes no sense to invest any time on that, right? And I'm not criticizing, again, I know how complex it is to take decisions and that you cannot solve or support everyone. That's just impossible. But the funds are very difficult to get because they have to make the project in advance. They have to put the money in advance. Obviously, it's not going to be, imagine the 12,000. It's going to be much more, because with 12,000 nowadays you cannot do that much, right? You have to take the risk. You have to work towards that, and hopefully you will get the funds, right? So the funds are, from my humble opinion, not the motivation of that digitalization. And that's my special view in Spain. Again, I'm not criticizing, but the fundings are fragmented so much, right? And I don't know how we can do it better together, right? But from my humble opinion, we should do in a different way, if you allow me to say that. So if I can speak freely, I would recommend to finance or fund less entities or organizations, right? Just to be able to make the difference. And also, if you provide more money, you will get more attention. And for me, makes not total sense that you have to do the project and do everything, do the investment at risk, and then you may get the money. I mean, if you are able to set up the right project, you should have some confidence on the fund, right? And that's, again, easy because I'm not in the EU position, right? So hopefully this helps everyone here to understand my vision. And if we fund less entities, we can have a biggest impact. I think that's something that it's easy for everyone to mirror, right? So as Antti was saying before, streamline administrative processes, right? I mean, I don't know how even to start with that, because it should be like a smartphone application where we can ask for that. I'm sorry, but that's my aim. And because if we wanna digitalize the SMEs, we should digitalize them in a way that they can see the value of the digitalization, right? And again, that's easy. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying honestly my opinion. And I have seen some small SMEs that they were not able to put the money up front, right? And because getting the funds, it's risk, and they don't want to take the risk. So that's the third thing that I think that we should consider as a society, European society here.
Great, thank you, Sebastian, also for your very candid thoughts. So I guess, three things you're outlining. In your case, I mean, in Spain, you need to have impeccable balance sheets, and that's itself probably coming out of the pandemic is a challenge. Secondly, the fragmentation of the funding. So, and here, I guess for the legislator, the job is really tough because obviously there are millions out there and they will need to find criteria that can help them select where they are betting and where they are not. So it's a very obviously heavy responsibility on the policymakers, but I think it's a fair suggestion to maybe consider aggregating those funds. And the third practical point, and here again, obviously we know that the reason why the funding is dispersed once the project is completing, it's to avoid obviously this being used for different purposes. I mean, that's very obvious to everyone, but for sure, maybe we can offer an encouragement to see whether the financing could be dispersed in the middle of the project with milestones and so on. This being said, the Secretary of State Artigas, I think, has already seized this type of concerns when she spoke about in the new SME package in Spain. They are focusing on fixing the bureaucracy. Let's see if they will reach the app on the phone, as you're suggesting. So I think the reassuring message is that governments are looking into this. So we do hope that this will be visible and tangible in the field as soon as possible. Maybe coming to you, Luc, if you want to build on this topic, because obviously SME United is representing, so in your organization, you have 70 national SME organizations. So each of them has intern SMEs as members. So you're basically here voicing anything between 9 and 10 million SMEs views. So I think your thoughts could complement very nicely what Sebastian just told us. So would you like to share some thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. No, I think that Sebastian made some excellent points, and especially also on funding and how to help. First of all, in general, SME United is of course not we are not asking to support all SMEs directly, because this is impossible. That's why we are always in favor of measures or support measures that are in the interest of all small and medium-sized enterprises. And that is, of course, a difference, so that it should really help as many SMEs as possible. We have also taken into account, and this is often forgotten, as the definition of SMEs is quite broad, that we often see that a lot of the money then goes to the tiny minority that is between 50 and 250. And there should also be at national level some corrections, that the help, if there is direct help to companies, that they are going to the majority of the SMEs, which are micro enterprises and small enterprises. But it's always a difficult exercise, of course, because even for a micro enterprise, some hundreds of euro can already be of enormous help, for example, in order to follow a training on digitalization and so on. But once again, the effort or the fundings for SMEs should in general be used also for general purposes. And then if I look at the RFFs, then it should tackle, for example, the whole issue of skilling and reskilling, the issue of infrastructure, because this is, of course, in the interest of all companies. We have, although, to be careful that especially for the infrastructure, and a lot of countries are lacking behind, that they are not going to use the SME money in order to finance this digital infrastructure, because we know, for example, SME United, in order to reduce administrative burdens, since more than 10-15 years, we are insisting on the application of the only once principle, meaning that a company should only give once the necessary information. Already 10 years ago, member states were not in favor because their administrations were not ready with the digitalization. and we heard it also from the Spanish deputy minister, that now they had first to make order in their public administration in order to be prepared for the digitalization. So, but this is extremely important. So the ensure an appropriate infrastructure, but also capacity building and access to digital know-how. And there, of course, also the digital innovation hubs will certainly help. So this is also well spent SME money. But there we have to ensure that there is a clear link with the business organization, because Sebastian was rightly saying, oh, there is a fragmentation of the funding, but also about the information. But there, our business organizations can play a very important role, because they know, of course, where the different funds are available. And there we have always insisted on a clear link between also the digital innovation hubs and then our business business organization. If I may come back on the digital innovation hub, because these will of course play a enormous role in helping small and medium-sized enterprises, because Maciek mentioned there the role that their or his sellers are playing, and of course this is important, but I hope that you do not misunderstand me. You give, of course, information about your products. What SMEs need is neutral information about the different possibilities, and there also the digital innovation hubs can certainly help. But once again, I mean, your sellers play an important role also in helping small and medium-sized enterprises in tackling this kind of information. But the DIH, they should certainly be demand-driven. And then maybe a last recommendation also for the RFFs. We have to take into account, and it has already been mentioned, that the SME community is extremely diverse. We have already seen the data, because those data, about 99.8%, we are using this daily, and we're still surprised that most of the politicians even are not aware of this. But there also our SMEs are very diverse. You have a company like Sebastian once, you have the front runners who are able to develop new technologies, and those who have will follow and have to adapt to the new technologies. And they are also not homogeneous in the capacity, in their internal capacity, and also not concerning their resources. So you have the micro enterprises, you have the medium-sized enterprises, and this is often forgotten. The digitalization as such is not standing alone. We need, and Irena, you mentioned it, and I think also the Czech deputy minister, we need what you call a ecosystem. We call it an enabling legal framework, because it's not enough that you have, I would say, access to digitalization. No, we need also an enabling legal framework which is flexible enough, neutral, future-proof, and that it also ensures fairness and transparency and a level playing field. And there, for example, the Commission has already taken some important steps, for example, in the platform to business regulation, and then now also recently with the proposed Data Act, which should ensure also access to data for small and medium-sized enterprises. So fairness in relations is equally important as the access to digitalization it's a whole.
Thank you, Luc. There was really a lot in what you just shared. I think well, first of all, I think you're very right in highlighting the importance of a digital public sector to support and basically also generate traction for SMEs digitization. skills and data. So, and those probably will be our, considering we have 14 minutes left, the last two macro areas I would like to further unpack with you. And so, and if we start with the skills, quoted several times so far, and maybe whoever wants to intervene, I would like to hear more about the what is out there in terms of challenges, because we all know SMEs needs to digitize. But what are the challenges we're all facing? And Luc, please, if you want to build on that.
Yeah, if you allow me, first of all, those digital skills are extremely important. But there we, in the first place, we support the acquisition of basic digital skills. This is also, of course, foreseen in the European digital targets, but there I think the Commission is not concrete enough, because those basic digital skills, in our view, they are part of the key competences, and they should be included in the general and basic education, together with literacy and numeracy. And then on the basis of a sound and broad basic digital skills, people can then develop job-specific digital skills, which then will differ, of course, between the sectors and the companies. And the issue, especially with skills, if you need to skill and reskill the workforce, an issue that we are always emphasizing on is that you not only need to skill and reskill the employees, but in the first place, and once again, this is most of the time forgotten, also the entrepreneur himself, because at the end, it will be him or her who will have to decide on the digitalization in the company, and who must implement the digitalization process, how small it is in the company. And this is extremely important that this training also goes to entrepreneurs. And then a last point is that, of course, especially in small enterprises, micro enterprises, with 1, 2, 3, 4 employees, it's extremely difficult to send your employees, and I suppose that Sebastian will certainly agree with me, to send your employees to a training outside the company. And this is then something very specific for small and medium-sized enterprises. There you have on-the-floor training, you have the informal training, which is extremely important. And then also we are favoring the micro credentials, which are very targeted trainings of short duration, but also very specific, which can be very useful for small and medium-sized enterprises.
Great, thank you, Luc. Heidi, Antti, do you want to go first with your comments before I give the floor to Maciek and Sebastian?
Yes, okay, I can follow on from what Luc said. He covered many of the bases that I would mention. Indeed, I mean, digital competences, basic digital competences, it is one of the key competences. And I think a couple of years ago, digital competence was even sort of ranked up there officially as a basic skill, together with reading and writing. So it is really crucially important. And we've seen over the last couple of years how true this is with the pandemic. So that is a big focus of the Commission. And I mean, I used to work in this area a couple of years ago. And we have done a lot of work in the past on, you know, getting digital skills as recognized as this important, you know, working on bringing this into the curricula of schools, which is, of course, is difficult for the Commission, because this is very much a competence of the member states. So we can only provide tools and encourage and do this kind of thing. So we have developed a lot of tools. We've developed the digital competence framework. The digital skills indicator is very much linked to that. So this indicator which is now used as the target for the basic skills in the digital decade. And then there's been a lot of work, for example, through the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. I don't know if you've heard of that one. So that was set up a few years ago, and this is very much bringing on in the private sector. So private sector organizations have come forward and made significant pledges to train different segments of the population, including very much the workforce. And then we've worked together with member states, and member states themselves have set up national coalitions. So there's been really been a lot of work. And in the last year, 2 years, we have then started to put more focus on really the big problems in terms of the workforce. And that is, retraining and upskilling, and then also, providing enough highly skilled workers in the digital domain, because we see that there are huge gaps. And as digitization expands, and as we encourage this digitization, there's only going to be a bigger and bigger need for highly digitally skilled people. And then just sort of coming back to the Hubs initiative as well. I mean, the Hubs initiative is a whole package. It's supposed to be an easy access point for SMEs that need to digitize. And one, important part of that is enabling the entrepreneur themselves to understand what's needed with a digital maturity assessment, providing them with the skills and expertise that they need to make a digital transformation, not just adopt basic technologies, but also see how the business can be transformed successfully through digitization, and also the skills then of workers. So I'll stop there.
Great, thank you, Heidi and Antti. Any comments from the Finnish perspective?
Yeah, first one comment which is closer to the project, I know, which is of course the skills. There's a limit to the amount of skills that an SME can have, and then it's also about access to skills. I mean, and the thing we very much looking into in our project is that how do we make sure that these sort of services which are based on the standards we do, they need to be at an affordable price available for SMEs, because that's the key for them to adapt the whole structure. Then a bit outside my sort of personal expertise, but I think one of the focuses which we've tried to do in Finland is then to do sector-specific stuff with SMEs, because then you get into more concrete and more easily digestible, so that we have digitalization projects related to health services, the creative industries, tourism sector. So when you go into more concrete stuff, then it's easier for SMEs to absorb, rather than giving the sort of try to give them tools to learn how to use, but perhaps to give ready solution, sector specific solutions which are there already. Thanks.
Great. No, thank you for that, and for the thought on the sector-specific training. Maybe just conscious of time, we have 5 minutes left. I would close this chapter on skills, maybe asking you, Sebastian, what is your experience in developing talent and retaining talent?
Yeah, my experience is tough, as you may imagine, because in the digital skills, I have to say that it could be nice to get people or professionals from universities ready to go, but there is a gap. And I'm glad that Heidi was commenting that, right? So yeah, I'm aware that it depends on every state, right? But I think that this may apply on many states, unfortunately, right? In our company, our organization, we require highly skilled workers, right? People with talent and abilities, and sometimes we go to universities and we invest 2-3 years to get them ready for our business, and then all of a sudden appears a giant, a super cool company, large enterprise with many benefits for this employee or colleague, and they jump to the large companies, right? So sometimes SMEs, we are the basement for creating good professionals. And flexible IT is able to compete with them every day more and more because we are growing. But I remember early days where it was, "We're friends, go ahead. I wish you the best. I mean, you have to take it." Right? And that's what you have to do as a person, but as an entrepreneur or founder, it's, oh, I have to start over. I have to start over, and this is a huge investment that it's hidden, but affects to your gross profit, obviously, right? And we're here all about the gross profit and being able to grow and survive as companies and to provide good services to our customers. I don't know if you remember California 10 years ago, and if you have had the ability to go there 10 years ago, people was changing job every 3 months because they were getting 10,000 extra or whatever. It was 1 mile less from their home, and they were moving to a new position, right? So I think that the technology space, it's similar right now here in Barcelona and also in Madrid, because we have offices there as well. We foresee many European companies moving the talent or spaces or research departments there, and this is making this even more complicated for SMEs, right? And so these are the two examples. California, for me, it's something that in our space, it's happening here in Barcelona and Madrid, and also that we are the ones creating and giving the students the ability to progress and create their own career, and then all of a sudden they disappear for something that you cannot compete with, right? And I agree with my colleagues that that digital skills has to come from the board, right? From the top to the bottom, right? And for instance, we have had the chance to create a chief digital officer position back in December last year. And so since that, the company has changed a lot because our main problem was how we can grow being sustainable, right? And with digitalization, we can provide to our employees and colleagues autonomy to do the same with a portion of the time. But you only understand that when you start doing and implementing digital transformation, right? And that was a massive change for us. And I encourage every SME that is attending here today to empower someone in their organization to be able to start from the sales process back to the invoicing, evaluating every single step and providing and identifying certain processes that takes days to take place and change that for minutes. That's how we have been changing since December. And I have to say that my sellers now are super happy because they have a calculator and they can do a quotation in less than 5 minutes, right? And this is just one example. But if you, with that digitalization, you can grow as a company because you are giving everyone the autonomy to do an efficient work, right? And that's our experience, I have to say. I'm sorry, because I was changing about the skills, but as having the right chief digital officer always, it's a skill thing, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is a great way to conclude our session today, a call upon having a chief digital officer wherever possible, because as I hope we demonstrated today, investing in digital transformation of small and medium enterprises is making them more competitive, also an international stage, and it's certainly making them yet more resilient. So with that, I would like to thank our wonderful panel for the very insightful contributions you have shared with us and allowed us to unpack this very complex SME topic. I would like to thank our audience. We hope you did enjoy and find informative this first episode of the RRF series from HPE and Forum Europe. We hope to see you all on July the 5th, where we're going to debate about RRF and healthcare. Thank you so much and see you in July. Bye.